All of Cam York, Tyson Foerster, and Noah Cates were up for new contracts this summer. Danny Briere locked them down. They will stay Philadelphia Flyers. Today, we are looking at the contracts they signed, whether they were good, whether they were bad, and whether Danny Briere did a good job. Let's kick it off with the Noah Cates extension.
Okay.
It's a 4-year, $4 million a year extension, so $16 million overall. Noah Cates has established himself into being a pretty darn good NHLer, I would say.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on this extension when you heard about it?
I was pretty happy about it. Noah Cates, I feel like one of those Swiss Army knife players that I feel like you kind of like instinctively undervalue just because they're not a flashy high-end talent type of guy, but can do so many things on your team. Like that line was one of the Flyers' better lines this season. Low bar, obviously, but it still was.
It's true.
He has a lot of early Sean Couturier vibes. Like the shutdown ability is huge, and I think that's a big deal. Also, he can play the wing. Like we talk a lot about how this team is going to look when it's finally constructed, and I think the idea of Noah Cates on your third line as a wing is like a very good one, and locking him up for what's a very reasonable cap hit for, I think, a length of time that really gets us into what I hope will be the wide open window of contention for this team, I think is a good thing. And it's short enough that you're not locking yourself into something that could go terribly wrong down the line, but also it's long enough that I think you're getting a good deal. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to find fault with this one for me.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about this deal for me, and I like the deal, I think it's a fair value deal. I think it's unlikely that Noah Cates will underperform this contract, especially with the cap going up so much over the next few years as we expect it to continue to go up. It does expire at age 30, and that tends to be the age where Danny Briere doesn't really like to sign guys to extensions. At least that's what he's told us. Now, he did ultimately sign Travis Konecny to an extension around that age, so maybe he's lying. But he has said that the danger zone for another extension is around that age 29 to 31 range. Noah Cates falls right into that with this new contract. So it tells me that they want him on this team. They like him on this team. But either A, they're not necessarily expecting to give him another contract when this one expires, that this is going to be maybe his only long-term contract with the Flyers, or they just don't think he's going to cost that much ever. And they think that when this contract expires, he'll sign an extension at age 30 for a similar amount of money because he's the type of player who just may never break the bank because he's more of a do the little things kind of guy who doesn't score a ton of points. And those guys, while everyone will get paid more as the cap goes up, those guys are never going to be in line to get $7-8 million a year. I think that could be his thought process that, look, we love what you bring to the table, but if we were going to sign you to a 7-8 year contract, we were probably going to have to give you a $6+ million cap hit. And we don't think you're ever going to be worth the $6+ million cap hit. So let's give you a 4. I like the bet because I don't think I see high-end scoring potential in Noah Cates. He's already on the older side. He's like 25, 26 years old. I think this might just be who he is, which is a good player, but not a great player.
No. And I think we've talked about this with regard to trades when it comes to Noah Cates, is that he's the kind of guy, the value that he brings to the team kind of like in the aggregate is greater than you would ever get from him in a trade, especially 1-for-1. But also I kind of think it's greater than what you're ever going to have to pay him, like for the same reasons that you just said. Like it's not really flashy on paper, but like as a cog in the machine, it's pretty important what he brings to the table. And I think it's valuable. And I think that I do think that if he's still this guy at 30, I don't think it's going to be like a hard no just because he's 30. I think it's going to be like we'll pay you 6. You know what I mean?
If that's the going rate for this kind of guy
3 or 4 years, you know, and I think that'll be fine. And he does play the kind of style I think that could wear down. So also it's kind of a bet that like, okay, well, if he isn't good anymore for whatever reason, we're getting out of it before, you know, it really falls off a cliff. And that's a good thing too.
Okay, so seems like we're both pretty positive on Noah Cates' deal. The next deal, which actually was the first of the 3 that Danny Briere signed, Tyson Foerster was signed to a 2-year, $3.75 million cap hit, so $7.5 million overall. a classic bridge deal.
It is a bridge.
It's very much a bridge deal. And this is where you get into that idea of Briere not wanting to set guys up to get another big contract at age 29, 30, 31. The bridge deal puts Foerster in position to get his big contract if he indeed continues to develop the way they think he's going to develop at like age 25, 26. And then maybe that's when he gets the 7.
Yeah, right.
Well, I guess it'll be a 7-year deal now because by then the new CBA will come into place and you can only give 7. But this seemed like the Flyers kind of kicking the can down the road with Foerster and being like, we're not feeling good enough to give you the big money yet.
Yeah.
But maybe in 2 years we will.
Yeah. This one's an interesting one for me because I feel like we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about, prior to this happening, extending Cam York and extending Tyson Foerster, and like, what would you do? How would you go about this? And Tyson Foerster was the guy that I was always like, I want to go long on Tyson Foerster because I really think there's something there, and I would love to see them get him on a super cheap 8-year deal that he's going to age into really, really well. However, this like injury thing kind of makes things interesting.
Which I don't think they knew about when they signed him.
Right.
Or at least they didn't know it was as serious as it ultimately ended up.
And then also the fact that he didn't take a step forward really this season.
Yeah.
And I think we all expected him to.
It's fair.
It does kind of make me think that like this was probably on the part of both parties, like and I'm going to prove it to you on one side, and then you're going to pay me. And you need to show us from the Flyers side, and then we're going to pay you type of thing. And I think that I'm hoping that it works out well for both parties. Like, I am hoping that the problem we have in 2 years is that Tyson Foerster is worth a whole lot of money and they got to give it to him. Like, if that's the problem, it's a good problem to have. And then there's also, like, if he stays what he was last season, like, is it better that he's a trade chip? Like, maybe you don't want to go long on that guy. Like, I think, like, I would have preferred that they were able to go long on Foerster because I buy it.
Right.
That said, I feel like this is a really safe bet for both parties. And I'm really hoping that it works out on both sides in the sense that Tyson Foerster does prove it over these 2 years. And then the Flyers are able to go long on him, as you said, at an age where it makes a lot more sense than it does when he's older.
Yeah, I think where I'm at is when the contract was announced, I was a bit disappointed that they didn't go long-term with him. Now knowing what we know about the injury and about the fact that like this is just a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
If this is year 1 of the deal and year 1 gets sort of ruined or at least hampered by this injury, by this elbow issue and the infection and whatnot, if he misses time or if because he had a weird offseason, he starts out the season slow and isn't that effective the first half, then suddenly the 2-year deal makes a lot more sense because then, you know, if he's going to get the big extension after these 2 years, like if year 1 ends up being something of a wash, chances of him getting the big extension aren't that large because my big concern was you sign into this bridge and then he blows up next year and the following year he becomes a 70-point, 30-goal guy with great underlying numbers and you're like, oh God, now we're going to have to pay him $10 million a year. Well, if year 1 has a chance of already being a wash, maybe when he gets the extension after this one, it's not going to be that big because he doesn't even have that breakout because he got screwed over by an injury. And like, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But it does make me think that like, all right, if this year now is looking like it might not be the breakout, then really it only has to be year 2. And then if year 2 is just okay, then maybe the big money extension he gets in 2 years is going to be about what he would have gotten this time, except 2 years later.
That's a good point. The one thing that makes me nervous about that is that you do see a fair amount in the NHL of guys getting contracts on the back of one really good year.
It's true.
And then they end up just like not being that guy.
Yeah.
So it would be a lot cooler if we saw 2 consecutive years.
I mean, in the end, I want to see Tyson Foerster have 2 really good years because it would help the Flyers.
That's not bad either.
In the end, when you're making these decisions as a team, and you're making the decision of do we go short term or do we go long term with the player, you're making a bet.
Yes.
You are betting because if I'm sure the Flyers, if they really wanted to, could have went long term with Tyson Foerster on the deal. They just would have had to pay him more than they wanted to in order to convince him to sign a 6, 7, 8-year deal. So their bet is that we'll be able to get him at a similar price that he's asking for now on a 6-year deal 3 years down the road when we have to negotiate with him again because we're not sure he's going to take that step fast enough.
Yeah.
Well, if year one of the deal of a 2-year deal is now potentially going to be hampered by an injury, the likelihood of him not taking that next step over this 2-year term probably goes up a little bit.
Very good point.
All right, final player. This was the most recent one. Cam York signed a 5-year extension worth $5.15 million per year. We've had debates about Cam York.
We have.
I like this extension. I think it is a fair compromise. Where are you at? Because you know I am higher on Cam York than you are.
I was actually going to say that I feel like this is a deal that people like me can be okay with and people like you can be okay with. I still am unsure that Cam York is going to be anything more than like a pretty good second pair guy.
Okay.
Like not going to change the game, but he's probably not going to hurt you too much. Paying that kind of player $5 million a year in this cap situation, I think is fine. Like that's fine. So, and also it's not an 8-year deal, which I was nervous about again, because I'm not sure that I buy what he is. That said, how old is he going to be when this is up? How old is he now?
I believe he's 24 now, so I think he'll be 29.
So he'll be so that puts him right on that that cutoff, which is interesting.
It does.
Because it's almost like it almost makes me think that Danny Briere might not buy it all the way either.
I think that might be true.
Yeah.
When I first saw this contract, my first thought was, oh, good deal. You know, lower cap it than I expected at that term. I think Danny did a good job in negotiating. My second thought was, this looks like a very tradable.
I was going to say, and there's no trade protection.
It looks like a very tradable contract. Now, the trade protection couldn't have kicked in until he was 27 anyway, because that's the rules of the CBA. But it could have kicked in at 27, and it didn't. It just seems like a deal where, yes, York is a bit on the small side, so he does have that going against him in terms of teams wanting their defenses to be friggin' huge because of Florida and Vegas and everybody.
Right, of course.
But there's still going to always be a market for a smooth skating, good puck handling, good underlying numbers type of defenseman who can take 20 minutes a night. If the Flyers, like, this gives the Flyers the opportunity where if a deal comes up, if a, you know, if a Chris Pronger type deal comes up, where he can be the Joffrey Lupul in the Chris Pronger.
That's a great,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really, really good comparable.
Where he can be the clear-cut NHLer who isn't as good as the guy you're getting, but you're getting a quality NHL player plus a top prospect plus a high pick, and then you get the big impact player. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm just saying that it's a reasonable enough cap hit that I don't think a team would be like, no, I don't want Cam York. Be like, yeah, Cam York's a positive value asset. He's a valuable player. I'd want him in that deal. I think it leaves that door open.
Yeah, that's a really good point, which actually that makes me like this deal even more, honestly.
And if he's real good, then they'll just keep him.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, great. Cam York is an $8 million defenseman that we're paying a little over $5 million. Cool.
Sounds great.
Stick around for 5 years, Cam. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, like, once again, Danny Briere has given me no reason with any of these 3 deals to think that he's not really good at his job.
Well, Kelly, I hope he continues to give you no reason to think he's not good at his job. Seems like in general, we were pretty happy with these extensions.
I think so.
That was the shootout. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. And
thanks, Chuck.
Keep an eye for all the rest of the content we will have on our channels and on the PHLY YouTube channel.